Hey SOAB Imitator owners, Ted here. As you know, and that's probably why you're watching this video, I had a recall on the shafts because I had lost about 5 or 6% of the shafts and the little top was twisting off, and so I want to make it right. So this is a video to show the few of you who wanted to do it yourself. Most people sent it in, which I recommended. It's a little hassle and a little tricky, but you can do it yourself. So this is the video I promised to show you how to replace the shaft yourself. But you will need all of these tools. It's hard to believe to replace a little shaft, you need all this, but you need some tape, Phillips screwdriver, little bitty screwdriver, 2mm Allen wrench. This is, you can use a regular one, I just like this kind. Sharpie, pair of pliers, can be channel locks too. Snap ring pliers, some kind of, I think it's a T15, this is a torque bit. T15, T16 right in there, you just have to try it. I never have figured it out because I don't know what size that is. Pocket knife, hammer, rat tail file, and something about this size. This is a 3/8 inch short, socket extension that we'll use here in just a second. It could be anything about that size. A little grease, you'll need some grease. I made a little board with a hole in it. You don't have to do that, but you'll see why here in a minute. I did it. Now, I already unscrewed these just to save a little time, but undo the very top. There's 4 screws right here. Undo that, set it to the side, and then underneath you had the pulley. You may have to take just tight a couple, something on either side to pry it up. Pull this pin out of it. It only comes out the top side. This is a pin and pin holder. Now, because the shaft's made different, this insert is different, so we have to replace this insert as well. Okay, and that's where the hammer comes in. Get out of the way. So just knock it out. Not hard. It's got 4 little grooves in it that match the grooves in this insert. Now this insert's a little bit bigger than the one that came out of it, so it's kind of tricky. You just want to match these little ribs here to the grooves on the pulley. It's going to be a little hard for you with a hammer, but that's how I did the first 20 or so before I realized I could use something else. Hit it, and it's liable to want to go a little crooked, so try to hit the other side to keep it straight and try to make it go flush and straight. But I remembered I had this little press, so I can use it, and that's a lot better and smoother. Voila. When it does that, because it is bigger, it peels off some of the plastic inside, so then you need that pocket knife to scrape this plastic off that it pushes out the bottom. This part rubs on the motor plate, so it needs to be smooth. There. Put the pin back in it, you're done with that piece. Now, remove the motor. It's got 4 motor mount screws in here, 2mm Allen wrench. I've already undone 3 of them for time's sake. So I just got 1 to undo. When you do that, the motor will drop down in the bottom. Put that off the side. Now the motor's loose from the motor plate. However, it's still attached to the toggle switch. So you'll need to loosen the toggle switch. I've got the motor wire on the bottom side of the toggle switch. That makes it off when it's up, because it's easier to accidentally kick it on, putting it down in something, kicking it up, so it's off up when it switches up. Take this and be careful. You can strip that little boot off of that toggle. Just loosen it. Don't take it all the way off. Just loosen it enough to flip your toggle upside down. And then take your Phillips and take the wire off. That's attached to the motor, to the toggle. There. Now it's completely loose. Now this is one of the important things you gotta do. These long screws we're fixing to take out right here, there's 4 of them. They hold this motor together right here in the center. So tape this motor together where it cannot come apart, because if it does, you just jacked up big time, because there's some gears in there that'll get messed up. So, and the Sharpie, this is where it comes in. Find one of those screws, mark a mark on the silver part and then on the body, the black part, so you can line it up when you're putting it back together. There's some gears, there's a gear in there, it doesn't move, but it's got teeth and it's got to go right back in the same place. I've got a vise, you don't have to have that. Pretty handy if you do. Now we've got 4 screws here to hold this part on. You could use a gun to take them out. I wouldn't use a gun to put them back in. You can strip them out pretty easy, but take them out for time's sake especially. Use a gun to take them out. Take them out completely. One more thing before we can get that apart. Snap ring. It's got a little snap ring around this shaft. And sometimes this is hard to get that snap ring to get a hold to it. I hate the way they make these things. Rats. There we go. That's a little tricky. That barely give you enough room to put a pliers in there. There we go. Now, this little screwdriver is where it comes in handy. You want to put it in there and try to pry this silver piece up, which I did, and hold the shaft down so it won't come out at this point. You don't really want it coming out yet. You want to hold that shaft in. It's got a little washer under here. Make sure it stays on there. I have seen some that didn't for some reason, but most of them have that washer. When you take this shaft out, jiggle it a little bit. It'll may drop, keep the gears in there. Got lucky, and it did this time. There's 5 little axles there, and there's 5 gears. If some of them come up with it, it's okay. Just take them all out and put them back on the new shaft, and then put them back in. I got kind of lucky on that one. I put a little grease around these little axles, I guess you'd call it. And then just wiggle it till I find, ooh, got lucky. Don't usually get that lucky. Went in pretty fast. Now you're going back together with it. Make sure that washer's on there, and you line that mark up. Right there's where mine is. Fit right on there. That way these little screws line up. I've been putting a little grease on these screws. I don't know if you have to do that. Some of them are just a little corroded when I took them out. And so I do that just to help. Now again, I would not put them back in. You can strip them out. They're cheap little screws. They will strip out pretty easy. And get these kind of snug, but be careful. You can get them too snug pretty easy. Water doesn't get to it, so it doesn't have to be waterproof. Now, snap ring, got to put this snap ring, and what you want to do is just barely have the snap ring sticking through the ring, the snap ring pliers part, because there's no room under there. If you get them too far through the ring, you can't get the pliers off when you put it on, just barely on there. There's a little bit of slack in the shaft. If you pull up on it, it'll expose that ring a little better. That makes it easier. There. Now it's there. There is one thing I didn't show you a while ago when you're doing this pulley, but I just forgot. But if you're doing it with a hammer, it helps if you'll take this rat tail file and file those little grooves in this pulley out a little bit, because those ribs on that insert are a little bit wider. Kind of taper that whole top side. It doesn't take much, and you don't have to do it, but that may help. That's what the rat tail file's for, and I forgot to tell you. Okay, so the motor's done. So when you put this thing back, there's two flat sides on this motor right here. They match up with flat spot on the underside of this. And actually, what I like to do is put a little grease in here first, try to get it inside that washer, just to help it not dry out. You'll notice right there, you get a little slack in there where those square pieces match up. So if you back it up and get right in the middle of that slack, it should line the screw holes up pretty close. There it is. Not much slack, but you get right in the middle of it, and it ought to work. You can get these pretty tight. It's going into metal, but it don't have to be, tight as you can get it, but pretty snug. Now the motor's on it. Put these little, this back next to the box, and you can hook this toggle switch wire back up. Of course, it's just common sense now, just reversing what you already did. The reason I want to show you this, when you put this toggle switch back up, be careful. It's got some washers on it. Don't get it extremely tight, because it just needs to be snug enough to keep from leaking, but you can strip that waterproof boot off of that. That's pretty much it, except when you put this pulley on, this pin holder's got a round part on the bottom that goes in this track right here. So depending on the orientation of that shaft is how it fits. If it fits from on the round part of it from here to here, the pin's got to be fully extracted. If it's in a flat spot from here to here, then it's got to be in. So it's easier if it's fully extracted, so hopefully it is, but it depends on how this insert's put in there too. So just make sure the bottom part of that pin fits in that groove there, that cam, because that's how it works. That's pretty much it. Put the top back. This is just plastic. Don't get this top too tight. It's not waterproof. Water gets in that top right here. It's got a hole right here where the string goes through. So it's got to get in there. Just kind of barely snug. That's all you need. And that's it. Had any questions, feel free to call me or email me. Number's on every email I send out. I'm glad to talk to you any time of the day. Thanks, guys.